Did you know that some 401k plans allow you to contribute more than the personal contribution limit? And it's called an after tax contribution, or also known as Mega Backdoor Roth. And this is not the same as the Backdoor Roth IRA. This is the Mega Backdoor Roth for your 401k. If your 401k plan allows you to do this, you're going to have three options, and that's to contribute to the Roth 401k, traditional 401k, and after tax 401k. So allow me to explain how it works. Unfortunately, only about 30% of US employers offer the Mega Backdoor Roth option for your 401k. And I was really fortunate to have the Mega Backdoor Roth option when I worked in the private sector so that I could catch up on my 401k contributions for all the years I had spent paying off my debts. And if you're a high income earner making $200,000 a year or more in gross income, you should ask your employer if they offer this option in what's called a 401k after tax contribution. But anyway, this is how a Mega Backdoor Roth generally works. Your total contribution limit is actually $70,000 for the year 2025. And I'm sure that you've been hearing 23,500, 23,500, this and that. That is just the employee portion of it. Okay. And between you as the employee and your employer, you get $70,000. And if you're over the age of 50, then the total contribution limit is $77,500 because of the $7,500 in catch-up contribution. And if you're between the ages of 60 and 63, then the total limit is $81,250 because of the $11,250 in catch-up contributions. That makes sense so far, right? Your personal contribution limit as an employee is still $23,500 or $31,000 if you're over the age of 50. And if you're between the ages of 60 and 63, the employee contribution limit is $34,750. And your employer contribution can also go into either Roth or traditional 401k with a new 401k rule under Secure Act 2.0. In this scenario, if you get the 100% employer match up to 6%, and the total employer contribution is going to be $12,000, like it says right here, this part is crucial. And I'll tell you why. So assuming that you're under the age of 50, between the employee and employer contributions, you're going to have $34,500 remaining. And because you want to subtract $23,500 in employee contribution and $12,000 in employer contribution from the $70,000 in total 401k limit. And if your employer increases their match, then you need to deduct that from either $70,000, because you have to be careful and not miss out on your employer match by not putting too much into your 401k after tax contribution. And if you contribute all $34,500 to your after tax contribution and your employer decides to increase their match, you need to lower your after tax contribution, or you could end up missing out on the free employer match. So again, you're going to have to manually calculate how much you get in employer contribution before making the after tax contribution. And I also would not do the Mega Backdoor Roth if my 401k does not offer what's called an in-plan rollovers to a Roth 401k or in-service withdrawals to a Roth IRA. And I know this is just a bit complicated process, so bear with me while I try to explain it as simply as possible. So with the in-plan rollover, what happens is when you make an after-tax contribution, your money can convert from after-tax money to a Roth 401k. So generally speaking, only the portion of the conversion that represents earnings on after-tax money will be subject to ordinary income tax. The 5-year rule also applies in the in-plan rollover from after-tax dollars to Roth dollars. You just have to wait at least 5 years before you can make any withdrawal from that pot of money. What I prefer to do is make an in-service withdrawal from the Roth 401k after-tax contribution to a Roth IRA. And I did this with my previous employer, who in the private sector, who had Vanguard managing my 401k at the time. So I basically opened a Roth IRA with Vanguard and have it connected to my 401k. The Roth IRA was much easier because all I had to do was automatically move money, my after-tax contribution from my 401k to the Roth IRA. And it was like an automatic rollover from 401k to Roth IRA every single year. So this money here at $34,500 will just go into the Roth IRA. I didn't owe any taxes on the rollover because I already paid taxes on the after-tax contribution, but the money that accrues from 34,500 is taxable. So I would have to wait until you're 59 and a half. And that's the reason why I moved over to the Roth A, right? So why would anyone contribute more to the 401k? My reason was simple. I was so behind on my 401k contributions when I was 31 years old, and I had just paid off over $110,000 in consumer debt by the end of 2015. And then it took me another 5 months to max out my emergency fund. And I couldn't start maxing out my Roth IRA and 401k contributions until the beginning of 2017 because I was trying to pile up my cash reserve. So in 2017, I contributed a total of $54,000 in my 401k between my personal contribution, employer match, and the after-tax contribution. And in 2018, I contributed a total of $55,000 because the contribution limit increased based on the inflation rate at the time. And in 2019, I contributed a total of $56,000. So my personal contribution rate at the time in 2019 for 401k was $19,000, and the employer match was around $9,000 in the same year. So I contributed the remaining $28,000 to the after-tax portion of my 401k. So by the end of 2019, my total contributions without the earnings and interest were actually $165,000. And I felt pretty comfortable at that point to slow down on my 401k investment because I felt like I caught up at that moment, right? So it really depends on your financial situation too. And starting in 2020, I just made a maximum employee contribution and got the employer match because I felt like I had too much money tied up in my 401k. So I wanted to balance my net worth between my retirement assets, real estate, and cash reserves. And if you're behind on your 401k, find out if your 401k broker or your employer offers the after-tax contribution or Mega Backdoor Roth. And it can make a difference in your financial journey, especially if you're making over $200,000 a year right now.